Hello everyone, I hope you're enjoying your second consecutive snow day. We will be having our test tomorrow, but because we've had 2 snow days in a row and you haven't had a chance to get help from me and ask questions of me, I will be letting you use your notes on the test. One of the items that you might want to have handy as you take your test is this chart that I gave out in class for doing hypothesis tests on one proportion and one mean. Notice here we have our hypotheses, the name of the test, the conditions to be checked, the test statistic formulas, how to calculate the p-value, and how you draw your conclusion. So that would be something that would be handy to have on your test. Also, I've highlighted a few things in the book in the chapter review section at the end of chapter 9. First, remember that hypotheses are always about parameters, not statistics. So make sure you're using mu and p, not x bar and p hat. The second item I've highlighted here I want to draw to your attention because several people got the interpretation of a p-value wrong on the quiz. So assuming the null hypothesis is true, our p-value tells us how likely it is to get the results at least as extreme as the observed results by chance alone. So getting a test statistic of that value or more extreme. And then also down here I have how we do our conclusion based on our p-value. So if our p-value is less than alpha, we reject the null hypothesis. If the p-value is greater than or equal to alpha, we fail to reject the null hypothesis. I've also highlighted information about type 1 and type 2 errors and what those mean, although most of you seem to have that down pat, just don't forget about that. Down here, this paragraph talks a little bit about power and what that means, and we just barely touched on power in class, and so I want to talk about this for a second. We want to have the test reject the null hypothesis if that's what's supposed to be done. So if there is a difference, we want the hypothesis test to detect that difference, which means that we're avoiding making a type 2 error, and that means that the power of the test is high if we're avoiding a type 2 error. To increase the power of the test, we could increase the sample size. So for example, if I'm flipping a coin and I only flip it, let's say, 20 times, you might want me to flip it more times so that you can be convinced that if the coin is fair or not. So you'd say, well, I don't want to say that the coin is fair when it's not fair, so could you flip that coin maybe another 5 times? Another way we can increase the power of a test is to increase the significance level. So in other words, we raise the alpha level, which is the probability of making a type 1 error. By raising the probability of making a type 1 error, we decrease the probability of making a type 2 error, and that increases the power of the test. And then notice this last sentence here, the power of a test will also be greater when the alternative value of the parameter is farther away from the null hypothesis value. In other words, let's say that I fixed a coin so that it's 49% heads. Well, that's not that different from the hypothesized value, so that might be hard to detect that the truth is that the proportion of heads is 49%. However, if I fixed that coin so it was only going to be 25% heads, that would be easier to detect, and the power of the test would be greater. Let's see if I have anything else highlighted. Oh yes, a paired t-test is a way to analyze the results of comparative experiments and observational studies that produce paired data. We looked at an example of that yesterday in our notes. All right, last but not least, I'd like us to take a look at what else we have here at the end of our test. First of all, notice there's this online quiz that you can take, and you can choose the answers that you think are correct. And I'm not reading through these right now, I'm just taking random guesses at these. But then notice, if you scroll down and submit here at the bottom, it will tell you what percent of the questions that you got right. And notice it also gives you an explanation whether you got it right or wrong. So that might be something good for you to take a look at. The other thing I want to point out is that in this practice test in your book, I did add some sticky notes to this test, so you can read the comments I made about a few of the questions here. I think I made comments about 3 of the questions. Question 2 and 3 I made a comment on, and it looks like number 6, question number 6, which had to do with increasing the power of a test. So I highly recommend that you go back and take a look at some of these multiple choice questions that are within your book. And if you have any questions, just try to find me before school. Hopefully there will not be a 2-hour delay tomorrow. If there is, we will still be having your test because I'd like to get this in before spring break. We'll just have people will have to go to class a little bit later, and we'll have to try to get the test to start a little bit earlier like we did the last time we had that happen. So if you have questions, please feel free to email me those questions. Thanks. Bye.